Hello and welcome to the weekly podcast from the Huffines Institute for Sports Medicine. I'm your host, Tim Lightfoot, and I'm so glad that you took the time to join us today. Every week we strive to bring you another interesting person in the world of sports medicine, human performance, and health. And this week is no exception. We're really pleased to have with us today Dr. Anna Artiles with us.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast, Anna.
Very excited to be here. Thanks.
Well, we're excited to have you. Let me tell the audience a little bit about you, and then we'll just go from there.
Sounds good.
Dr. Artiles is an assistant professor in the Department of Aerospace Engineering here at Texas A&M University. She got her master's degree in aeronautical engineering from the Technical University of Madrid. She then completed her PhD in aeronautics and astronautics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or most of us know it as MIT. She's here at Texas A&M doing work in aerospace engineering, primarily in human spaceflight and space systems engineering, with an emphasis on aerospace biomedical engineering, extravehicular activity, and human performance. And so we're really glad to have you not only on campus, but here with us today in the podcast. We had the pleasure a week or so ago to talk to Colonel Mike Fossum, who was an astronaut. And during that podcast, we talked about the difficulty that they have moving in spacesuits, especially when they do extravehicular activities. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up because that's one of your research areas. You're working on some of the joints in the next generation spacesuits.
Yeah.
Tell the audience a little bit about that and how that goes about.
Yeah, of course. So I was exposed to the spacesuits for the first time when I was in grad school at MIT. I had the opportunity to work with Professor Dave Newman and Professor Jeff Hoffman, who is another former astronaut. And we were looking at the human spacesuit interaction because it's really, really hard to move inside a spacesuit. It's like a balloon, like a big balloon pressurized. So every time you try to move one of the joints, it just has the spacesuit has this tendency to come back to its neutral position.
Right.
So people inside the suit have to fight against the spacesuit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, we were talking about there's injuries and shoulder injuries in particular.
Shoulder injuries are unfortunately very that happens very often. There has been some measures that has been taken to prevent those injuries. One of them, lots of those injuries happen actually during training. In the pool, astronauts train in a big swimming pool, right, with the International Space Station in the pool, a replica. And they used to train upside down whenever they needed to really recreate whatever configuration they were going to do in space. They used to train upside down, and even if the idea is to have them neutrally buoyant in the water, the weight is still present and gravity is still present. So they were shifting against the suit on the shoulders. Another big factor is the upper part of the spacesuit is really hard. It's called the harbor torso. So it doesn't have a lot of mobility on the shoulders. So if astronauts try to fight the suit, they are never going to win.
Sure.
I'm taking this, but Jeff Hoffman said that once. So I don't want to say it was myself who said this, but the suit is always going to win.
Right.
You just have to work with it and learn to work with it.
Yeah, and so it must be a challenge, a design challenge, to design a suit that provides little resistance to movement, but keeps pressure inside.
Right. So one of the aspects we are working on is to try to come up with soft robotic technology to help you counteract all these torques that are that come from the suit. So instead of you trying to fight against that, you have some sort of exoskeleton, and probably everyone can imagine what that is. But instead of having hard components, this soft robotic layer will be soft, so that will help with this sort of contact injuries as well. So this is one of the aspects we are working on to try to improve mobility for planetary exploration.
And so one of the interesting things for me as I have interacted with you and some of our students is that so to simulate some of this, you have almost, they call it a robot, but it's a humanoid shape that's inside the spacesuit that you can measure all the torques and everything for around all the different joints.
Well, unfortunately, I think that robot is no longer functional. Is not something that I have in my lab. That was in my previous lab at MIT. They had this instrumental robot, but some of the most valuable data that actually I am using to model all these interactions come from that robot. And a previous student put a spacesuit on top of it, pressurized it to the right amount of pressure. And we took all those measurements from there, all those joint torque relationships is what it's called. So I think that specific robot is no longer functional.
No longer with us.
But no longer with us.
Yeah.
But definitely the data is really interesting for us and the kind of work we're doing here.
Yeah, and it's not like you can design one joint that works everywhere. I mean, each of these joints have to be designed separately, don't they?
It's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, working on all those challenges and trying to get some prototypes working.
So when do you think that the generation spacesuit that you're working on will be functional? They'll be flying it?
Yeah. Well, this is a very high risk, high rewards type of project.
Yeah.
So these are advanced revolutionary concepts. We are funded by the NASA NIAC program, which is about advanced concepts that are very far in the future.
Sure.
So TRL 0, which means the technology is not ready at all. We are just exploring some options. So I won't say very soon, maybe in a few years, if that all works out.
It's interesting, having grown up in the 60s where NASA was the source for all this research. They did all the research there. They built everything. And now we have a different model where we have universities involved. MIT's involved. Texas A&M is very involved. Other universities are involved in building equipment that's used by NASA and other space industry partners. So that's kind of an interesting development, isn't it? We've almost distributed it.
It is, and I think we are seeing that more and more. With respect to the spacesuit community, it is still pretty tight, I would mention, I would say, but definitely involves a few universities, and we sort of know each other a little bit. A lot of the work is still doing in-house, again, just for the spacesuit technology. Definitely for a lot of other technologies that are being developed now that we are going back to the moon. We are seeing calls every other day about calls for industry to develop the new rover or the new lander for the moon.
Wow.
Recently, there was an announcement as well about 10 companies that have been selected and have some funding to do different things related to the idea that we are going back to the moon. So we are seeing that more and more, and getting academia and industry and other actors getting involved in this, which I think is great.
So what excites you most about this? I mean, it's wonderful to say, oh, we're going back to the moon or we're going to Mars, and we have all these commercial entities. But what makes you get up and get excited about doing the work that you do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've always been passionate about space, and it's something that I've always wanted to get involved somehow. At the time, when I was picking a university to do my undergrad and grad degrees, in Spain we just had this one option, which was aerospace engineering, but more focused on planes and more traditional aerospace. So this is what I did, but I sort of found my way, I guess, to try to do something related to humans and exploration. And I think it's in the nature of the human race to explore. We're explorers, and that is something that I've always been really, really excited. And then I used to say that I was born in a weird moment in history, because I didn't see a lot of going back to the moon. I wasn't here, and then now we're sort of stuck in the middle. And I'm sure
we're starting all over again.
In
almost.
A few years, I hope we'll get to the moon pretty soon, and hopefully to Mars. And I hope that will happen in my lifetime. But I used to say, oh, this is a bad time, but I actually think it's a really exciting time, because we have all these technology that needs to be developed, all this knowledge that we need to explore and gain before doing all that. So we can definitely contribute to that endeavor.
One of the things that we ask all of our guests is how they got interested and excited about what they do. And you mentioned it just a little bit, that you went into the aerospace thing, but you did want to do space. What was it about space? Was this something that happened like when you were 5 years old, or what really turned you on and made you say, that is what I want to do?
I don't think I have one of those.
No.
I've heard multiple people saying, this day when I saw this, I don't know. I think this passion has always been there. I guess I remember a few things when the ISS, the International Space Station, was going to be launched there. So I was relatively young and got very excited about it. Most recently, when the last Mars lander landed on Mars, I was in grad school, so it wasn't that long ago. But I remember just getting again this super excitement about this and being awake. It was 2 a.m. in the morning or something, and I was very excited and emotional because we were able to do this. So.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Now your work is more than just joint angles and things. So tell the audience a little bit more about what you're doing, because your lab is actually larger than that.
Yeah. So I guess I have very broad interests, but all of them. I guess one way to define this is that I'm interested in human performance in extreme environments. Of course, one of those environments is it's space, right? And one of the big questions that I am interested about is about what's the effects of gravity on human performance, and human performance in the broad sense.
Right.
So we are looking at, as one of the specific aspects is the cardiovascular responses, and the idea is to see how the human is going to react if we change gravity, and we have certain ways to simulate that or to try to modify gravity. One of them is centrifugation.
Right.
So I'm really involved with artificial gravity studies and centrifugation studies, and that's something that I want to pursue. And also thinking about potential countermeasures for human degradation in microgravity environments. You can have people spin around, but we still don't know how to implement it. Everyone agrees it's a great idea.
Right.
Well, if we remove gravity, we have all these issues that happens. Let's just put it back again, right? Yeah. But then we don't know how much gravity do we need, for how long, do we need it all the time, do we need to go up to Earth gravity, or just a little bit less will be okay. So there's so many questions about that, and that's sort of one of the big questions that I am attacking.
Yeah, the dose of all that.
The dose response.
Yeah,
exactly.
And we should let people know that there's a centrifuge coming to campus.
It is.
Yeah. We're building a centrifuge facility here on campus, and you're going to be a big major part of running that facility.
Right. Yeah. So I will be managing the research that will come to this centrifuge. So this is an NASA centrifuge that they are going to permanently loan to us. I guess that's the official term to use. So it's going to be open to other people to do their studies as well. And it's 6 meter diameter. So it's considered short radio centrifuge, but it's pretty large.
Yeah, it's almost 20 feet.
Right. And yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's one of a kind that was built a few years ago, and NASA is not using it anymore. So we are putting it on campus, and that hopefully will be up and running by next summer.
And having that kind of centrifuge, you can do all kinds of studies looking at the how to prevent bone loss during space flight and cardiovascular problems. And
muscle atrophies and other aspects. Vestibular responses. And the vestibular system is actually really exciting. I had some exposure to the vestibular studies, and I've been involved with some of them, and especially with centrifugation, because people can get sick, motion sick.
Yes.
And then there is this additional line of research looking at how can we make people used to this type of rotation without being sick.
Right,
so we need any training? How much training? How much exposure? And of course, we want to have a high gravity level to prevent bone and muscle, cardiovascular system. But then if you spin too fast, you can get sick and not be functional. That's also definitely not good. So So all that fits into that big question: how can we implement artificial gravity during space flight?
Yeah, there was a scene in a recent movie, First Man, is about Neil Armstrong, where they showed him on a centrifuge getting sick and so forth. And many of us in the business have seen these kind of things. So so that's certainly a interesting thing that you have to deal with, that you have to learn about. So what do you see in the future? What do you think is coming down the road? If someone's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast and they're 12 years old and they say, that's really cool, I want to do that, what do you think they're going to see in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think the next 10 years are going to be very exciting. It seems we are finally taking a direction. Now we're going back to the moon with the objective of going back to Mars. So it's not only let's go to the moon and we'll see. The actual objective is going to Mars, but we are just going to stop here first and get a lot of lessons learned of how we should do this. So I guess that it's a little bit what I was saying before, that these are exciting times because there is all this development, and now we are deciding how we are going to do this. Maybe a few years later that is going to be decided already.
Right.
But now we are taking all those decisions.
We're actually moving forward, yeah.
We have an objective. There are some dates over there. I think Congress is on board for once. So there's some money in there. So I would say we need everyone, not only engineers, not only, I'm between a life scientist, I guess, but I am still an engineer, but we need designers, we need outreach, we need education, we need to get everyone involved. Everyone has a place in this endeavor, and we can use any help that anyone can give us. So if, I've heard multiple times, I want to get into space, but I am not an engineer, or I don't know how to do math.
Right.
It doesn't matter. We need everyone. We need other aspects to be covered as well. So I guess this is what I would.
Well, and I'm an exercise physiologist. I was involved with NASA, for many years, and so there's room for everyone. There's things that everybody needs to do. Yeah.
And talking about exercise, one of the other projects that we are looking at is to look at the effects of using virtual reality during exercise protocols to see if we can get people more engaged into the exercise routines and things like that. So that definitely involved, virtual reality people, computer science people, and all the people like you, physiologists, to help us understand the exercise side of things. So multidisciplinary teams. I think that's where we are heading.
Well, that's exciting. And thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
You're welcome. And our regular listeners know that we always give our guests an opportunity to give us their big take-home message. So if there's something that you want everyone that watches this to remember, what would that be?
All right. I would say just follow, maybe it's very typical, but just follow your dreams. Maybe you don't see the right path to get into that. And I see this very often with students. Just get very excited about these fields, and they don't know how to do this, or this is maybe not an easy path to get into this business. There is always a way. So just don't stop trying, because it's going to happen if you keep trying.
Yeah, keep trying. That's right. Good take-home message. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all for that have tuned in, for watching us today. Regular listeners and watchers of the podcast know that this is the time we normally do the podcast question of the week. And this week, the podcast question comes to us from Troy Briscoe, our producer. And the question he gives us is, what is the next step in the manned space program for the United States? Be the first one to send us that answer at huffines@tamu.edu. That's huffines@tamu.edu. And you'll win one of our nifty podcast t-shirts. We often give out more than one a week, so don't hesitate. Go ahead and send us that answer when you've got it. And so thank you once again, all of you. Thank you, Anna, for being with us again.
Thank you.
And thank you, all of you that have tuned in. We hope that you join us next week when we have another interesting person from the world of sports medicine, human performance, and health. And until then, we hope that you stay active and healthy. We're out.